We rolling?
Yes, sir.
I got some.
You have them?
Salud.
Yeah, salute.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Trey, what's the opening song that we're gonna sing?
Oh, you got some left-handed saluting.
We did in the last episode. We did Kermit the Frog. I don't.
Which
we did.
one? Why are there so many?
We did that one already. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we were married
and we wouldn't. Isn't that how it goes?
to wait so long?
Sorry, I don't know the words to that.
You know, the Beach Boys.
Yeah, I know the Beach Boys. What, are we singing?
Yeah, it's just it was just
you guys, yeah.
just
You
a new
gotta pick
tradition.
something I know.
You don't know that one. Try a different one.
I forgot how the Soviet Union anthem goes.
Gloria al bravo pueblo que el yugo lanzó.
Trevor, all your suspicions have now been
The
confirmed.
Venezuelan anthem. I can sing the Puerto
We'll
Rican
all be
one.
singing that soon anyway.
By the way, so new rule on the show: whenever Trevor talks, we don't all have to turn our heads over there and look at him.
Okay.
So don't look at Trevor.
You don't have to. You can if you want, but you don't.
I'd rather not.
What's Trevor's role?
Trevor chimes in from time to time.
Trevor's a producer.
Oh, so Trevor's kind of like Paul Schaefer.
Yeah,
He's the Paul Schaefer.
because you got
Okay.
the music and the commentary going.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
there you
And
go.
he's
it's kind of like Paul Schaefer. Got
You know
it.
who Paul Schaefer is?
Yes.
Okay.
But you gotta acknowledge Trevor. You gotta look at him.
Well,
It's
yeah.
okay. I'd rather you not.
It's just I just in some past episodes, people were always sort of straining like their necks to try to see him over there, and you don't have to do that. Is all I'm saying. You can, but you don't
I
have.
don't really want to look at y'all anyway.
All right, we got to get rolling because Reishin is he's
On
got
the clock.
a hot date or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Um,
Hot day with I'm on the clock, man.
You're on the clock. All right.
Yeah.
We so we just we kind of rebooted the show. We took a little hiatus over the summer. As I said, this is the first one back, except for last week. Trevor and I just did a little solo duo episode, just talking about coming back to the show and what we're going to be doing and things like that.
Okay.
A little bit same general idea is that we want to talk about life in America. America. What does it say on the website? A show about life in America featuring people who live there. So you guys are people who live there. Today, though, you guys both are people who have also lived elsewhere. You haven't always lived here.
Correct.
And we want to talk about immigration.
Oh no. It's
We could talk about war in the Middle East, but I just
No.
decided not today. Today we'll do immigration. We'll wait to see how
a
things
less controversial topic.
less controversial. Delfina's like, no, we're not talking about
No,
that.
you'll get me excited. You'll get me upset.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
There's a lot to be upset.
You can be upset. It's
No,
all right.
you should be-
It's
it's
all right
okay
to be upset. All right.
Horrible things are happening.
Yes,
Here's,
very horrible things are happening.
In this very room.
Yeah, there was a song that was about to sing, and that was going to be. I almost wish I was somewhere else.
So, all right. I started in thinking about doing an episode about immigration. I was thinking about it. There's a lot of things to talk about. Obviously, it's in the news everywhere you look now. I mean, it has been for a long time, but now it's really reached a new heightened sense of whatever. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do some reading on this because, maybe perhaps in the past I've had an overly simplistic view of the whole subject. So let me enlighten myself to, the various perspectives and things like that. So I did some reading, not just I did a little mainstream media reading. I did some think tank stuff and different things that people were saying. Here's what stood out to me right now, because there's all this fuss and turns out we are going to build a wall because there's nothing else we could do with the money, and so people are upset about that, and Elon's down at the border with his camera taking selfies with sheriffs. I mean, and you can see people streaming across through the water in the background. But if you cut through all of that, what stood out to me was if you look at what the news and the main and the respectable journalists and like I said, I looked at some think tanks. It seems like the big problem is we don't have the infrastructure to get everybody through whatever the process is, so that they can get work authorization, and so that they can get into the workforce. Because apparently, once people get into the workforce, then they become part of the economy, and they're not a drain on government spending and all these things. But when they're in limbo, or like when they're in purgatory, they're a drain. Eric Adams is complaining and Kathy Hochul's complaining because they drain all the public services because they're not really allowed to work yet, even though obviously some of them do, but they can't work yet, but they have to be taken care of. And so they're a drain on public services until they can enter the workforce. And that's where, when people say our system is broken, again, if you look at the media and the think tanks, what they mean is we're not able to get everybody through to where they now have a temporary, a TPS, or they have whatever authorization they need. So to fix the problem, we need to speed that up, which makes me go, well, if the problem is just that we can't get people through the process to where now they can work legally, and if pretty much everyone's going to get through the process, everybody who shows up here and comes across the border and says, I have nowhere else to go, if they're going to get through the process, then why don't we just take the process out and just let everybody go to work? If the goal is to get everybody through the process and it takes too long, and once they get through the process, everything is fine, then why don't we just get rid of the process and just let everybody go to work? But the one thing that's conspicuously missing, if you read American media, is, well, but what about the bad people who come across the border? Not that everybody who comes across illegally is a bad person, not that even most of them are bad people, but if it's really easy to come into the country, and if you're head of an organized crime unit of some sort, that looks like a pretty tempting thing to exploit, right? So, but nobody really, in American media, nobody really, on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. X will forever be known as X, formerly known as Twitter. Yep. And so there, people are sounding the alarm. You got people sounding the alarm, and you got people saying, we got military age men coming across the border, and they're just blah, blah, blah. But the media doesn't look at that. If you look at the media, the only problem is we can't get these people through the process fast enough. So that's what all stood out to me. I know I didn't reach a conclusion to that. I'm just teeing that up for conversation.
No, I disagree. I don't think that's. I don't think that's what. I think that's oversimplifying it. And I think the big mistake is listening to the media at all. Right. Sure. Especially in, is it October?
It is October.
Especially in October of 2023, when we have an election looming. Right. So what's going on right now? This is going to become, it already is, but even more so, a horribly politicized topic. Mm-hmm. When it should not be a politicized topic. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. The problem exists. Yeah. Right? The challenge exists. Let me say that the challenge exists. And I think that oversimplifying and saying that it's not sufficient, we just don't have enough people to get people through enough resources to get them through the process. I love it when you say, well, just get rid of the process. I think that's actually kind of fun.
I mean, if everybody's going to make it through, then
everybody's going to make it through. But that's the other piece of it, is not everybody's going to make it through. Yeah. Right? Not everybody's going to make it through, and not everybody qualifies. But the problem, so now you bring me another tangent, which is the problem actually occurs before that, is that people don't actually know that there is a process. And why don't people know that there is a process?
People being people who live here, or people being people who are coming here?
People who are coming. They don't even know that there's a process. Why? Because who benefits from there not being a process? Who benefits from that?
Besides the people coming here, you mean?
Yeah. Who benefits from a lack of a process? The smugglers.
Oh.
So if I'm somebody,
I was thinking about the honest people.
The honest people, right? Yeah. So it's big business. Here, if you take a look at everything, we're Americans, right? We're capitalists.
Yeah, in theory.
In theory.
For the next 5 minutes.
For the next 5 minutes we are, right? Right. When something is big business, you have to take a look at it from a business perspective. And this is big business for the smugglers. So if I'm a persecuted young woman with a child that has been harassed and beaten and raped and whatever in my home country of, name any country south of the border, and I am desperate to get out of my horrible situation. I want to go see if I can make a way in the United States of America that I know that is supposed to open up their arms for me. Am I going to go and investigate, even though I have a phone? Because even the poorest of the poor in this world today have phones that they can access information. Am I going to look at that, or am I going to trust my network of information? Of what do I have to do? And that network of information is being controlled by people of nefarious intentions. And they're going to say, oh, no, those Americans that, don't go through that regular process. Let me smuggle you for $5,000.
Yeah.
They don't know any better. And so the vast majority of these people that are sneaking across or trying to sneak across or getting smuggled across don't have all of the information because the information is not available to them.
Trevor's nodding.
So Trevor's nodding. Okay, so
You must be on the right track.
I know some such cases.
Yeah.
Personally.
yeah.
He hangs out in interesting places.
Okay.
I've done my fair share of smuggling myself.
Okay. So yeah. They're going to come for you,
His
Trevor.
nickname is Coyote.
So I have way more to say on that topic, but I'm just going to say
Yeah.
right there
Fair.
is that that people don't know there's a process. And the one other thing that I'm going to say, and then I'm going to shut up and let somebody else talk because, people that listen to my show know that I like to talk, is that when we're talking about not enough people resources to man the process, to execute the
To
process.
fund it. Just that's the thing is we just can't fund enough programs.
We just don't have enough.
Right.
That is not isolated to immigration employees or government employees that are responsible for handling that process. We are experiencing that across the board with government resources. And I'll give you one very simple example. I remember when I got my global entry, when global entry was first came out. Oh, global entry, yay. And I signed up for global entry because I was traveling internationally all the time. Being in the oil industry, we kind of travel a lot, right? I signed up for my global entry, bada bing, bada boom. I went in for my interview. I had it in no time. Then my child became of age. I wanted to take my mother back to, her homeland of Italy because she wanted to see that for her 70th birthday. So I got her and my aunt and my child all set up with global entry. Bada bing, bada boom. You go, you sign up. Bam,
Did you catch that her mother's Italian?
I didn't
Bada
catch
bing,
any of
bada
that.
boom.
Yeah.
There was no,
You
no
got your
stereotype in there. Yeah.
you got your global entry.
Right.
But now I was just talking to somebody 2 days ago at a conference last week, and she can't get her 6 months before she is available for an interview. It's like, what the heck is
Yeah.
going on? So
Yeah.
this is what's
I heard
going
that.
on
So I can't get mine.
across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's across the board that we're having challenges with resources to provide different types of services. And so what do? Do we make those services, those limited resources available to people that want to come to this country, or do we make those limited resources available to people that are already here?
Oh.
So I'm going to shut up.
I hear echoes of America first.
I
and
know.
that,
Well, you can also walk and chew gum.
But being that sounds like nationalism, and nationalism is evil. I'm surprised you haven't heard that. I'm surprised you haven't
I've
heard
been
that.
known to be
You can
evil.
do two things at the same time. You can
Yeah.
do three things at the same time.
Yeah, sure, you can. Okay,
Yeah.
go.
So I'm here because I'm an immigrant, and I'm not an immigration expert. I've just been in the system.
Yeah. But you're kind of a smart guy. That's why we have you come
Yeah,
back.
but if you're like tackle this, so I'm an engineer first versus being an immigrant, right? So that's the usual kind of spiel. And the way you want to tackle any kind of problem is you want to deconstruct it, right? So the first thing is, it isn't just the stuff that's happening at the border, the system. You have to kind of break down the buckets, right? So if you there's three major types of immigrants, if you want to call them that.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is the
the good ones, the bad ones, and the ones we're not sure about.
Oh yeah, that's like a movie, right? Yeah, exactly. Depends on which side of the spectrum you are. They're all bad or they're all good, And that's actually that's half the issue right there, right? It's like there's no granularity in that. It's depending on which political spectrum you are. Either every immigrant is extremely bad, who's going to
Right.
come after you, or every immigrant should be allowed in under any condition, and that's the issue. And the answer is it's gray and it
And you
depends
get
on the
accused
individual.
of one or the other. So
That's right.
If you suggest
Yeah,
that
that's
maybe
been-
some of them aren't here for good purposes, then you get labeled as being somebody who thinks that they're all evil.
Yeah,
right?
and I have no
You're a
interest in
racist or
labels.
whatever,
I've,
right?
I've no, and we need
vice
to move
versa, the other way around.
And we need to move away from that. We can't solve problems, right? I mean, I like to solve problems, and
Right.
if you start accusing people of minor labeling, and then you can't solve anything. Right?
Sure. Okay.
Anyway. So if you kind of go back to like these kind of like buckets of people, right? So the first group is basically skilled people that come in, they go through the system, and they go through the process, and it's bureaucratic. And you have to go through it, and it's become more bureaucratic over time. So you have to kind of look into why it is that way. Right? That's one. The second one is
So you're talking there about people who didn't come illegally or didn't come
people
looking
that
for...
show up here for jobs, people who've been invited,
visa,
people that come
right.
for their families. These are all people that go through a process. They show up here as they've been invited to. They follow the legal process out here.
And I don't think typically nobody's concerned about that, right? With the exception of
that's
maybe
not
the
true.
Well,
H-1Bs
that's
are
not true
taking
because that
jobs,
part
but-
is overly bureaucratic.
Right.
I've been through it for
Right.
reasons, and it does add delays. And then there's the other bucket, which is basically kind of like refugees and stuff. That's usually what's showing up at the border, and we need to think about them as being refugees and not necessarily immigrants, because the question is, immigrants are people that are here to immigrate to a country and want to have long-term investment in the country. Refugees, you can almost classify them as temporary people that are in migration from one place to another. Right, so if you start looking at that,
Well, they're running
in
away
that
from
perspective.
something, and they're
Well,
not as
yes,
concerned about where
and
they're...
they could immigrate. So
Right.
you could go from bucket 2 to bucket 1 through a legal process, but like Delfina said, like that process is already pretty heavy, and that's kind of thing, and that's no one's fault except for the people that are in the system. That's kind of an issue. And there's actually bucket 3, which is actually people that have come here either through undocumented reasons, and even from that bucket, there is a way, which is usually a path to get to bucket 1, which is like sometimes DACA is one of the programs that do. So there are programs that can do it. It's just not good enough so ultimately what you're saying is that everyone needs to be in bucket number 1, which is full documented legal immigration, so they can contribute to society.
Yeah, right.
Some of my take back is maybe not everyone needs to be in those buckets. Like maybe if you are literally in transition, maybe that you should continue being in transition, right? Because ultimately,
What do you mean by that?
well, maybe if you are really a refugee, you are fleeing something severe, right? Like we all think we have problems, but the severity of living in a different country that's under extreme violence, you're persecuted for your life, your entire family is there, you will walk dangerous amounts of distances, you'll cross vast oceans because you're fearing for the worst case scenario, right? Maybe the U.S. is a place for you. Maybe it's not a place for you. I'm not saying that they don't belong here. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying maybe there's a transitioning place. Maybe there's another place actually that fits your cultural means, what you want from out of life. It could be here, but we haven't identified them.
Just
So you're
keep heading
automatically
north,
assuming that
basically, right.
everyone that has to be here will eventually immigrate. We haven't really asked them, like, hey, do you want to be here? Are there other places you want to look?
Are you here just because you're looking for a safe place, or are you here because you're
That's right. And maybe that might be something to tackle. Maybe there is another place they can go to, right?
Yeah. So it's a good point, but a lot of this. So we're talking sense here.
And again, I'm not an expert. I'm just stating what I see as how to handle a problem. Is that
Right.
We've assumed everyone wants to be here, but that may not necessarily be true.
So let's go back. That's true. Let's go back to the problem. Hey, Trev, pull up the second link that's got the chart in it from the Migration Policy Institute. Migration. What is this? What the hell is this place called? Migration Policy. No, that's an interesting one though. No, the one migrationpolicy.org. Migration Policy Institute. It's the second link. Yeah. Scroll down to the chart and then make it a little bigger. So this is a chart that shows for these 6 major places, 21, 22, 23, filings for notice to appear in immigration court. So this, to your point, there are all these buckets, but you add everybody up and we have to do something. So this includes people who have come here illegally. This includes just anybody who's come across the border, and the increase is kind of I mean, Florida's obviously Florida got the exponential increase a little earlier than everybody else.
Yeah, but they're making the trend the other way now.
Yeah, they're making it right. Yeah. So this is. So this is just filings for notices to appear in immigration court. New York from 60,000 in 22, and this is just year to date in 2023. It's not you got Q4 left, right? And I think this is where some people are saying, hang on, we can discuss the nuances of policy and process and everything, but like we're in deep shit if these numbers continue. Like, there's no way that we can. So why is it so bad to just say we're gonna secure the border and not just let everybody come across? Like, why is that such an evil notion when we're dealing with this?
I don't think they let people. I think they can't stop them. I don't think there's anyone sitting there. I can't. I mean, like the people of the border towns.
Well,
I would imagine like law enforcement, immigration.
Texas tries to put up barriers, and then somebody else comes and takes them down.
I don't think
Well,
Texas.
I'd interject here. A lot of border patrol police now have been cutting open the wires along the fence, allowing people to come through and fist bumping them on their way in.
Yeah, I saw a little bit. I saw that video.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I don't know what that is yet.
But
Can't comment. Shocked.
But you know that but there's always this national uproar among certain people in society who, anytime somebody wants to put in place any kind of a mechanism that. So I get your point. You can't just stop. In fact, Mr. Ramaswamy was up in Canada just the other day, showing how you can pretty much just walk. Like, if you don't mind getting your ankles wet, you can just walk across. But what puzzles me is, so even though you can't make the border completely non-porous, anytime there's any sort of an initiative or any sort of a suggestion that we ought to put some mechanism in place that stops people, a wall, a fence, whatever it is, more agents, more whatever, there seems to be this uproar, like somehow that's some sort of an inhumane thing to do. But if we don't do that, then we have this chart that only gets, what?
So let's look at New York, right? So right now, Eric Adams is in Latin America.
Going out of his mind.
He's right now in Latin America trying to figure out what to do and he said New York is full, right? So, New York was a pretty open state and city.
Well, they have the added complication of they have a right to shelter.
They have a right to shelter, right? Exactly.
So,
and I mean, let's be honest, right? I mean, like, except for a small minority of thinking, most people are pretty accommodating, and I would assume people are very helpful. If they see people in need, they want to help people out, right? In disasters, in those scenarios, right? But it does reach a point where if it is suddenly full, and there is issues around it, like how do you manage the resources to do so, right? So there is a legitimate concern here, right?
Right.
And again, I live in Houston. I don't really see. Not that I'm blind to it, but I've not really seen an impact of what's happening at our border in Houston, right, as such. I've not seen it.
Well, there's a
but
problem.
That's anecdotal. Why?
There's a problem at the. It's
but if I was in a
border
border town, I'd be losing my mind because there's suddenly this influx of people coming in, and not whether it's good or bad, or you don't know anything about the people, but it's like there is an unknown factor as to what's going on. Who are these people? Where are they here to stay?
How many more are there going to be?
How many more are they? Right. So if you can't stop this porous border, because you can't build firstly, it's 1,956 miles across mountains and there's rivers and people's own land and stuff there. Like, how do you secure that without using technology?
Sure, but there are some places where it's easier to come across, where you could erect some sort of barrier to stop people.
Except
from doing
that I do believe in Texas, so if it's eminent domain, you shouldn't be taking a rancher's land away.
Well, fair.
Right. So that gets into it a little bit there.
Delfina, I can see your eyes are going there. Don't hold back.
So much. First of all, I think that this is a situation where those who have opinions but
Present
have
company
no
excluded.
Present company exclusive. Those that, you said, people, you're going to build a wall and people get an uproar and we shouldn't do that and that's inhumane and separating families and blah. Those with the big opinions should not have an opinion if they are not some way, somehow invested in the challenge and the solution.
So what would that look like? How do I get invested in it?
Well, if you are somebody who is impacted by the challenge.
Got it.
Right? If you're impacted by the challenge, then you should have a say. You should have an opinion. And that's why I think that there's a component to this solution has to be less federal and more at the state level. Right? And so
ironically, that's exactly the opposite of what people like Eric Adams are saying. He's saying, I don't have enough federal support to do this.
Right. And
They're asking for more.
So I can accept that Eric Adams is looking for more support because he wants to open his arms. He wants to help more. He wants to do more. And if the taxpayers of New York are willing to fund that, then the taxpayers of New York should fund that. What I don't agree with is if somebody who wants to cry and scream and kick and yell that this is horrible and inhumane should impose upon the great state of Texas the economic burden of doing so, then you should be contributing some way, somehow, to lower my tax dollars.
Yeah.
Now, God bless Governor Abbott, who's basically said my responsibility is to protect Texas. My responsibility is the state of Texas. So if you're going to come in here, my taxpayers are not interested in funding this, so I'm going to bust your butt to some place where the taxpayers are saying that it's important to them. And I think that this is more
It
of a...
does seem very logical, as much shit as people give him about that.
Except that
It's just-
Texas
it's-
is part of the United States, so it has to follow federal law. So,
Is-
and immigration is not a state law; it's a federal law, right?
But that's why I'm saying that it should be more of a state
But it can't be a
challenge.
state law because you
Why?
don't immigrate to a state, you don't remain within the state. If you are within a state and you will only stay within the state can have a thing. But that's not how it works, right? We have freedom of motion here. So you have freedom of movement, right? So if you could qualify to enter, Arizona, does that mean you can never ever enter Texas as an immigrant?
Yeah.
No,
is
right?
it-
So that doesn't work that way, right? So
But take it
we
a
are,
step
we
I'm
are
always-
stuck with the solution being at the federal government. That's just
Right.
how it is, right?
disagree.
That's part of the. I mean, and it's okay to disagree, but that's part
That's
of the,
why we're here.
That's
Yeah,
but that's
sorry.
part of the law, right? Yeah,
I
that's
have
part of
to
the
say,
rule.
So I almost always, I will always come down on the side of less federal, more state, just because I think we're completely whacked out of what was originally. The idea was it was the United States. It was the state. It was states that have sort of this loose federal, kind of thing at the top, joining them together. So I will always, that's like a whole nother episode, but I will always come down on the side of we have the federal government should not have millions of employees. It's become way too big, and we should, and states should be more independent. However, in this case, and I'm not changing my mind on that, but it is kind of tricky because there is a point where you go, well, you're right. You don't immigrate to a state. You come into a country. Would there be some sort of mechanism that you could say the states operate within a certain set of rules that are established at a federal level, but the states have a certain amount of latitude to take action or to fund things or what have you, kind of. And it's also different if you're a border state, right?
Very different.
Very different.
So it seems like, so while it does seem like that's you're kind of in a quandary there, like I like the idea of states doing more and the federal doing less, but it's a federal problem. But maybe there's like some sort of a framework that you could put in place that certain states, particularly the ones that that are affected the most, could operate with.
I agree with that.
Now, if you want people to go from bucket 3 and bucket 2 into bucket 1, which is this legal immigration process to become functioning, contributing citizens.
By the way, you know
and
how
you-
this is going to be reported? Reishin Toolsi thinks that people at the border should be put in buckets.
Buckets, yes, physical actual buckets. Yeah. Home Depot style buckets. Yeah, Home Depot stocks go up. I should buy it now. We've identified that half of it is the bureaucracy that slows down the process.
Yeah.
Right. We all agree on that. So you need more federal employees at USICS processing more things, more federal judges, looking at discernible cases, see which is more legitimate, which is not, which qualifies for migration from bucket 3 to bucket 1, right? Depending on where you are. Right?
Would it be wrong if we just said, look, we have a system that's designed to handle X number of people coming into the country per month, per quarter, per year, and you just limit it to that.
That's in place already. Like, you can't get there's a limited number of green cards out there. There's a limited number of visas.
Well, this comes back to how do you stop
and it's
people
actually
from
based on, unfortunately, it's based on nationality as well, right? So it is. So you can't really qualify in terms of even getting the visa to stay unless you're part of this, like.
Sure, but what about all the other people who,
That's
the other buckets?
Well, so you have to process them, right? That's the problem. So I think the problem is the processing. That's one of it. Well, there's a couple of problems. One is why are they coming? Why is there this increase, this exponential increase of people coming from Latin America across here, walking over this incredible distance? They walk from Latin America all across Central America, all the way up to North
So I
America.
heard that Mexico is actually giving them a lift now from Guatemala up to the U.S. border. They're actually putting them on buses.
To get them out of Mexico.
They pass multiple countries on the way here. So the question is, like, why? Like, what's going on?
Well, why? Maybe that's the question: is why does this chart look the way it does? I mean, if you read the what this article from this is one of the think tanks. If you read this or what some of the other folks say, they say, well, it's just the cumulative effect of, more oppressive situations in other countries, climate change. Climate change you always got to work climate change in. Post COVID, so they kind of cite all these different global things that over in the last few years that are, in the aggregate are driving huge amounts of people coming to the U.S. So does that just become our problem now? Like, okay, well, I guess times are hard all over. Everybody come here. I mean, like that.
And I think that we're exacerbating the problem.
How?
I think that a lot of and again, I'm not an expert. I think the beauty of having these types of discussions with non-experts is that we're just normal, everyday people that
trying to figure it out.
They're trying to figure it out, and I think that when I see things like sanctions that we are imposing on places, like we're seeing an uptick. We're not
imposing
an uptick.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yep, that is a very
good. I said something good.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, but I like that. Yeah.
So if you take a look at, so it's actually, let's get back to Reishin's point right from the get-go. When he opened up his mouth, the first thing that he said is that we need to get to the root cause of the problem. You can't just look at this on the surface. You have to dig deeper. And I think the challenge is we as the United States of America are exacerbating the problem. When we impose sanctions on Cuba, we saw an uptick in the last few years in immigrants from Cuba. We have sanctions on Venezuela. We're seeing a huge inflow of Venezuelans coming in. And other places that we've even, we fight with Mexico from time to time. And you see that influx. So we're not innocent in the situation, but yet we're not 100% responsible either.
So you're getting into another episode that I want to have, which is how much really should the U.S. be meddling in other things around the world. But what you're saying is we go and we maybe meddle's not the right word. We get involved.
Yes.
We do things. We try to have an influence on what's happening in other countries, and then that creates hardships for people that end up coming here because of the situation there.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's usually the case. And it's not the United States
It's
alone.
all the CIA.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's most countries that
It's all the
basically
CIA.
have.
The CIA does all of this.
I mean, if it was, they could solve this problem like in a heartbeat. Yeah. They could just install another country, another government.
I think the argument would be what was that, Trev?
No, that was me.
Oh, that was you.
Yeah.
Oh. The argument would be no. These places are a shit show anyway. It's not the United States that's causing this. We're just trying to contain the whatever the situation is.
I mean, some situations are uncontainable, right? There was an interview done where they had this former lawyer from the oil and gas industry from Caracas, so very intelligent, very successful person, oil and gas lawyer, and then basically her scenario was that she ended up walking the Darien Gap with her daughter, and she loses her daughter. She finds her eventually, that's the story, but like she's physically unable to hold her daughter, and the daughter disappears for a few days, and she finds her again. So you have someone that's very, very successful, that had means and opportunity, and even with those scenarios, ended up walking the Darien Gap for safety. So some scenarios cannot be saved no matter what you do. And what happened in Venezuela is not entirely. It's the Venezuelan government is responsible for what happened in Venezuela.
No, it's
ultimately.
not.
No,
It's responsible. So to your point, Reishin, let's take a look at the root cause. The responsibility is the Venezuelan people that voted Chavez into power.
Yeah.
That then allowed for the situation today.
did they vote him into power though?
They
felt
vote
that was one of
Started that way, and then
In the beginning, they did.
And then
They voted
they
because-
hyper-focus only on one type of resource, which is only oil and gas. They no other real industry going on. When that collapsed, there was nothing else they could back it up.
So you kind of like be careful what you ask for.
That's exactly right. They were voting for somebody that promised them a free ride. That was his entire platform. His entire platform was to talk to the masses and say, I'm going to provide you with, I'm going to distribute the wealth. I'm going to distribute the resources. I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to give you everything. And they all said, yay, free money, free stuff, free living, yay. And they voted him into.
It always sounds good in the beginning.
It always sounds
By
good.
the way, for context, Delfina grew up in Venezuela, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So.
And my father
Yeah.
lived through the 1958 rebellion against the dictator, Benes Jimenez, when Venezuela first became a democracy. So
Right.
my father lived through it. My grandmother lived through it. So I'm not coming from a place of total ignorance.
I'm very tempted to go into the question of what makes people think that sounds like a good idea, but that would be
on education. It's a
Yeah.
lack of education,
and
right?
they're persuaded. Also, we're
But we need to tackle it from that perspective, right? As to the root, like this kind of conversation is exactly like what causes this upsurge. Can some situations be fixed? In the case of Venezuela, I doubt that can be fixed in the short term. But are there there's scenarios and the situations where it's outside the control of the United States? The United States has to handle the overflow of people looking for safety.
Yeah. So, I mean, in fact, this is what some people, particularly on the more progressive end in U.S., like in Congress, like AOC was just giving one of these rants recently about.
Why does anybody listen to her?
About well,
She's hot.
she's
Okay, Trevor.
Trevor. But sometimes she's parroting what she's heard other people
Yes.
say, and she doesn't do a good job of it, but you can sort of peek behind what she's saying and say, oh, I see this way of thinking. And the way of thinking she was saying was, well, we need to look at the root cause, right? Root cause being what's happening in these countries that's causing people to come here. Like, that's how you fix all this illegal immigration. To which people on the other side of the aisle say, what? So now, not only do we have to fix our own problems, but we got to fix Venezuela's problems, and we got to fix Cuba's problems, and we got to fix and da 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 da.
I actually have a different viewpoint, and this is for another show. We are going to we are going to schedule another show
Make a
because
note,
we
producer.
are pretty much out of time. I think that if we want to solve this problem, you know who could solve this problem? The Jeff Bezos of the world, the Bill Gates of the world. I think that the Elon Musks of the world.
He's at the border now.
What's that?
Gates?
He really no.
Oh, Elon.
Elon, he's at the
Elon's
border.
at the border, yeah.
Right now, yeah.
I think that if you took a guy like Jeff Bezos and you said to him, we're going to solve this problem, what are we going to do? We're going to come up with just as the smugglers have come up with their capitalistic big business approach to making sure that this problem persists, I bet you anything that we could get some of those really bright minds into a room and say, how do we solve this problem? And it'll have nothing to do with going into those countries and trying to solve their problems. It will have to do with finding out ways to set up trade-free zones, which are immigration-free zones, just like we have trade-free zones where you can bring goods into this country. The neutral zones, tax-free zones, and whatever. That we could put businesses together. We could bring manufacturing facilities right here in the United States of America and invite people to come in and work in those businesses. We could turn this into big business, and I think that we can solve that right here within our our four walls of the great United States
She's
of America.
not. She's not wrong. In fact, if you want to take it one
always
step
wrong.
further,
Good to know when you're not wrong.
if you want to take it
Always
one
wrong.
step further, if you try to
Except not
solve
Gates. I don't
all these
trust
countries'
Gates.
problems, you're never going to solve it, right? Because it's too complicated to solve it, and you don't have the resources, the power,
Right.
and the time frame right now.
And the government's never going to solve a problem.
But if you had to take a hyperbolic situation, and if you bring in all these tech, if you bring in all these
Not
moguls
Gates.
to bring to solve this
Not
kind of
Gates.
problem, well, maybe Gates as well.
Gates' solution will be I'll just spray shit on people when they come across the border,
He's-
and then they
he's-
all die within 18 months.
He's got resources and he's got determination. You literally need another country that no one's using right now. That's what you need.
or create a territory
Create
to
a-
use federal
you need
land.
to create a well, it may not be in the United States itself.
Correct. That's a good one.
It doesn't have to.
That's-
Literally, you need to find a country that no one's really using, and basically, like everything, you have to form a merger, like a business,
I agree.
unify it, and then basically, like I said, not
a
everyone that's here,
reservation?
Yes,
not a reservation.
but it wouldn't be a reservation in
Yeah,
the same way.
that didn't
but-
work out.
Yeah, well, too much reliance on gambling. But okay, so we find someplace where
Actually, that's a brilliant idea.
Utah.
That's a brilliant idea. Create an offshore gaming situation,
Floating.
huge tourism. Right? There's an idea for you.
Dinosaurs. Thinking dinosaurs. You think-
All right, this is my idea to solve immigration.
Yeah.
Remember that big circle thing in Rome where all the people would fight each other and everyone would watch and have a great time?
Colosseum.
I mean, the Colosseum, Trevor.
Exactly. You just have one of those and the best immigrant wins.
Oh my god. I think we should end the show on that note.
We should. I think that's going to do it. But we'll come back. Let's come back and talk about the capitalist solution to immigration because I think that's really good. All right. We've already lost Reishin. He's already.
I'm already on my
you got
hot
it.
date.
You're already on your hot date.
Yeah,
so.
hot date, yeah.
All right. That's it. Trev, we're done. Are we done?